Can all join and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you here. Glad you're here. Anyone here been to Japan? The temples there, they have some of them have heated floors.
It's good to know.
Wooden heated floors. Yeah. We don't have those.
Yeah.
Yet. There you go. Yeah, that'd be a bit over the top, you know. That would be like the Cadillac version of a Dharma Bum temple. But yeah, so for those of you who are here for the first time, it gets a little chilly in here, so bundle up. But glad you're all here. Anyone have a crazy day today? Only two of us? Right on. It's not bad. Well, I don't know what the rest of you are doing here then, you know. Yeah. Life can get pretty hectic, pretty crazy. But for me as a practice, I found that in theory, if you can remove any sort of attachment to the story behind what you're doing, like, dislike, pleasant, unpleasant, and just focus on what you're doing one moment at a time, then the craziness that can settle in, the sense of being overwhelmed and hectic and chaotic, and all the stories we tell ourselves about what we're doing actually makes things worse. When in reality, we're only doing one thing at a time, regardless of what that thing is. And so whatever is in front of us, if we just focus on that, if we pay attention to that, if we're mindful and aware of that, then it allows us to just be present with what's going on and take it one breath at a time, one step at a time, one moment at a time. And then you get through it. At the end of the day, you did some stuff, you didn't do some stuff. That's it. Sounds simple, right? Is that remotely close to anything that your day is like?
Kind of.
That's yeah.
Definitely parts where I get caught up in the story I put onto whatever I'm doing. Yeah.
How hard is it to abandon that story?
Luckily, I get distracted pretty easy. I don't know what I'm doing, so yeah. I don't know. Often not.
Yeah. It can be a challenge if you find yourself in moments where whatever you're doing, you start feeling that sense of being overwhelmed, or that pressure, the stress, the responsibility. Just come back to focusing on what you're doing. Because that feeling doesn't come from what you're doing. That feeling comes from the mind that's wandering to everything else. So the actual act and practice of being present means just focus on what you're doing and do not allow the mind to wander to anything else. That's the practice. And it helps to remind yourself of that every day. You wake up, you got 17 things on your list to do. How many of them can you do at a time? 1. And you get to number 2, and now number 2 is number 1. You got on the list, and number 9 is number 1. You're just at one thing at a time. And so for me, for coming back to my initial, for the last 12 hours, I've had endless lists of this is the number 1 thing I have to do right now. And you just go through them step by step. And I found that to be, for me, a really beautiful practice. So for everybody who's joining online, welcome. Nice to see you all. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello as you are, and share any thoughts. Well, not any thoughts, but we'll start with a meditation practice. For those who are joining us for the first time, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that's racing all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often helps. Slide to the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a chair or bench, same idea. Just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders, hands on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important with the practice, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Gently guide the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sound, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's not from anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands across the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your days. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not the escape, as people often think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And that present moment can be quite difficult. People often use meditation, Buddhist practice, spirituality as some escape. There's nothing more spiritual than becoming completely awake to the present moment. That's it. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting and breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do every moment. That's all. So it's a practice. Whatever you're running from, stop running. Whatever you're trying to get away from, unless it's incredibly harmful and dangerous, but usually it's just stories and fears. Just be with life. Or you'll spend your whole life running. And it gets tiring. So stop running. Just learn to sit. So with that, I'll pause. I always prefer just to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with, and use the rest of our time this evening, and I'll respond to whatever's on your mind. And for those joining virtually, again, welcome. Glad you're all here. Nice to see your names and little emojis. That's all I got. So feel free. There's a chat box over on your screen. If you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to chime in there, and I'll do my best to respond as well. So thoughts, questions? Yeah.
I've been trying to find a way to ask this because I can't find the right words. But when you're in a situation with a loved one and you guys get into a really heated conversation and they're acting out of character, how do you disconnect from that? How do you literally sit with it and not let their words affect you and not get out of character yourself? In the moment of rage and
Yeah. So a couple things. The question of, for those who didn't hear it, how do you, when you're in an argument, a situation with a loved one, and you think they're being out of, using your words, when they're being out of character, how do you detach from it, again, your words, and make sure that you don't do anything that puts you out of character? And how do you handle that? That's basically a question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's break down the question a little bit first. And can anyone else in this room relate to that question? Yeah. you're in the front here, but every single hand behind you was up, right? And if it wasn't, it's because their hands were just too cold and they didn't want to move out of their pockets. So you're, one of those things of you're not alone type of thing. Everybody's in that situation, whether it's a loved one, whether it's a colleague, whether it's the, person who made your latte the wrong way. But a couple things you said, and I just want to reflect this back on you because you used it twice. You said they're being out of character and you don't want yourself to be out of character. But think about that for a minute. When you say someone's being out of character, what that means when I hear that is that you have an idea of who they are and how you want them to be and who you think they should be. And when they're acting in a way that doesn't align with that, you call that out of character. Nothing is out of character. This is just who we are. Okay? And you've been in the same situation where you've been that person, right? And you don't want to be, as you said, out of character. You're not out of character, you're you. That's part of who you are, is my point. I want us first to understand this, is that, for me, I grew up an angry, pissed off, fill in the blank word, right? Treated lots of people poorly. Also treated lots of people beautifully, incredibly, right? The people that I was very close to and friends with would and are shocked at how I was the other side. Well, that wasn't out of character. That was also part of who I was. Does that make sense so far? Now take it one step further than that, because ultimately, neither the person who's doing the kind, wonderful things or the person who's doing the mean, angry things, neither of those are who I am. Those are just choices I'm making in that moment. Behaviors I'm expressing in that moment. Does that make sense so far too? Because what we often want to do is say, this person's nice, this person's mean. Because that gives us a label and something we can identify with, as opposed to recognizing when someone else is doing what you're calling out of character, that means they're what? If they're screaming, yelling, really angry, what does that mean?
Probably hurt.
They're hurting. Just like you are when you are that way. But what happens is we see people who are screaming, yelling, angry, and we immediately make it about us. Now again, and this is for everybody, physical violence, domestic violence, abuse, things like that. It's a whole different story, right? Verbal abuse as well. So you want to be safe. Safety first always is critical and important. So I don't want to discount that. But in many cases, when it's just a heated argument and you don't feel threatened or unsafe, if that is the case, you can recognize that that person's that way because they're hurting. So the question is, how do you not get pissed off back?
Like, how do you not let their negative energy go into you, and how do you not let their words hurt you?
Right. You can use semantics and change the words all the ways you want. My point is, when we are angry, what do we need at that moment? I heard it. Compassion. When you make it about you, and they're angry and yelling at you, it's really hard to have compassion for them. But that's what's needed. Then the question ultimately is, how do I do that? Understand life's not about you. They're the ones who are suffering in that moment. It doesn't justify their behavior. It doesn't excuse their behavior. It doesn't make their actions right or proper or correct. It just means the wisdom in a situation like this is to understand, why are they being this way? Because your question was, how do I not respond back in the same type of way? And the answer to that is to understand why they are the way they are. They're hurting. And when you can see that and the pain that they feel, that's where your heart opens and says, why would I throw more anger back at them? They already have enough anger. They don't need mine. That makes sense? And all we have to do if we don't, fully get that is ask ourselves when we are in that situation, kind of like I said, when we are the ones and we're hurting and we're acting that way towards people. If somebody screams and yells back at us, it doesn't help. It just makes us more angry. These things are not easy. They are not fun. They are not simple. That's why it's a practice. The other word I want to talk about is, you said, how do you detach from it? And I understand, I think, the essence of what you're getting at, but the real practice in Buddhism is we use the word non-attachment, which is very different from detach. Because detaching means, the way at least I hear the word detach, is like to cut off. So the way I heard you ask that question, knowing you a bit, is that what you're attempting to do in that situation is detach and not care, so it doesn't impact you. Is that a relatively fair statement? You think? Okay, well, let me finish and then you can respond if I'm way off. Non-attachment means actually to love them, but you're not attaching to their words.
Yeah.
You're understanding. You're not attached to their words because you know that their words are not about you, they're about them. Which also helps us understand that when we have non-attachment is actually love. For those who are brand new to Buddhist practice, it's not caring. Non-attached isn't cutting off. Non-attached is not detached. Non-attached is not getting rid of. Non-attached means we're not attached to the stories that we're telling ourselves about who and how we think they are. We're understanding that they're human and they're suffering. But what they need in that moment is compassion. That's true non-attachment. You don't want to detach from it. You want, again, physical, mental, emotional abuse aside, right? For everybody here. In these moments, you don't want to detach. You want to embrace. Wow, they're yelling at me. This doesn't feel good. Just imagine like thought bubbles, right? This doesn't feel good. This actually feels pretty terrible. Why are they yelling at me? Because they're hurting. What do they need right now? Need to listen and hear them yell. Within reason. And then we all make choices of what we want to do at that moment. Again, I've been working with domestic violence victims for 25 years. So I'm not suggesting that we continue to put ourselves in physical, verbal, emotional, abusive situations. It's very important. And I'm not speaking to you specifically, just in general, for those who don't know me, I'm not suggesting that we stand there and take verbal abuse and take verbal abuse and take verbal abuse. But in these rare moments where things like this happen, if it's rare moments, that's what's going on. You know? Does that help? Is that easy to do?
Okay, I don't know.
You don't know? Well, you'll find out.
I mean, I've been trying, I've been thinking that I'm doing the best that I can, but I have to try more.
It's always trying. If you love, you just keep trying, you know?
It's just that, like, non-attachment to the words because they have so much power over you and you love them so much. You don't want to hear people tell
Totally.
you, you know? It's just...
It sucks. I'm not, like I said, I'm not discounting
No, for
or
sure.
supporting that,
Yeah.
those words or the things they say. I'm trying to help you see with some sense of wisdom through what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
Their words actually have nothing to do with you. It's just an expression of their anger, their misery, their depression. You know? So, yeah. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
Does that align a little bit with the no self?
Mm-hmm.
Lost of you a little bit with the not attached. I mean, sort of not attaching that kind of helps
Yeah.
a little bit. It's hard to understand the no self. I mean, it's a hard question, but
Say that last part again.
That's a very broad question when
Yeah.
I'm asking, but I'm just wondering that, because I get a little confused with the no self.
Yeah.
I'm trying
So, for sure, your question of does that align with the teachings of non-self? Absolutely. You know, non-self can be looked at many different ways, but ultimately it's the recognition that we often roam around thinking that we're these like permanent beings, and that our perception of reality is ultimate truth. And non-self doesn't mean you don't exist. It doesn't mean you're not here. It doesn't mean, you can chop your arm off, like it's going to hurt. So we're physically here. But yes, non-self means we recognize that we're all just a series of a trillion causes and conditions over a trillion years.
I think about it like what I have a hard time with is not having an identity, like just learning about oneself, and
Yeah.
that's where I get a little like, you want to love yourself, you want to understand yourself, you want to, and
Yeah.
I don't have this self. So what's
Yeah, we got a problem. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
big dilemma is like, so Western psychology and Buddhist teachings are very deeply integrated. And years ago, I heard somebody say, if you're into Buddhist practice, you should probably be in therapy. And if you're in therapy, you should probably check out Buddhism, right? So there's a lot of similarities between the two, but there are also some very core fundamental differences, and you just addressed one of them. In therapy, even in your perfect example, understand yourself, get to know yourself, what's your true self, blah, blah, blah. And yet Buddhism comes along and says there's no self.
yeah.
So who is the self that you're trying to get to know? Who is the self that's suffering? Who is the self that's miserable? Who is the self that's happy? It's a complete, they don't align. Yeah. I didn't answer your question, but look at it this way. And again, this is not a plug for anyone who's in therapy to get out of therapy, anyone who's on meds to get off of meds. Please continue to do all of that because you probably need it. But the reality is, you could spend your whole life trying to figure out who yourself is. What if you're none of those?
Right.
You're just a human
Having an experience.
having experiences. That's karma, law of cause and effect. So, yeah, I didn't give you any answers, but just different ways to think about it.
I think that's
Enough for the next 3 years.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the heart searcher. The Buddhist teaching says, the Four Noble Truths in Buddhist teachings is life is filled with suffering. Second noble truth is the cause of suffering, greed, anger, ignorance. The third noble truth is the ending of suffering, nirvana, liberation. The fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path. Correct views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration, all of that basic Buddhist teachings on Google for free. The Heart Sutra, one of the most commonly recited Buddhist sutras around the world, says there is no suffering. There's no cause of suffering. There is no cessation of suffering. And there is no path. There is no wisdom or any attainment. So, glad I clarified that for you.
Thanks.
Yep, my pleasure.
Yeah.
And this is the introduction to Buddhism. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
Do you ever find that meditation makes it worse?
Yes.
Problem I keep running into. when I
Yes.
meditate.
Well, my simple answer is yes, but I'd love to hear you more, say more. So you said, just to repeat it for those joining virtually, do I ever find that meditation makes things worse? My immediate response was yes. And then you said it's a problem you keep running into with meditation.
Yeah, I think I have a hard time if I'm already kind of in my head about something. When I close my eyes and try to focus on breathing,
Mm-hmm.
I'm even more in my head about those thoughts.
Yes, because now you've closed your eyes and made it. So I'll make this one very simple. What's your name? Sorry.
Ignacio.
Ignacio. I'll make it very simple for you. Your new meditation practice is eyes open. This is the Zen practice. Zen practice is not eyes closed, right? Zen, the word Zen means meditation, right? And the practice, Chan is Chinese, Zen is Japanese, but the Chan or Zen practice is not to close the eyes and get lost in la la land, which is what just about everybody does when they meditate with their eyes closed, especially if you're new. And by new, I mean if you've been doing this for the last 10 years, you're new. And most people sit down and they close their eyes and they say they're meditating, and then their mind just wanders and wanders and wanders. And then, you know, I say something if we're here, or, you know, you hear a car or whatever, and you're like, oh, I should come back. But like you said, if you've got a lot of stuff going on and you sit down and meditate and you close your eyes, all you're going to do is just think and think and think more, because now you've actually also cut off the visual stimulation that could potentially distract you from whatever madness is in your head. So everybody can try this with me. So the Zen practice very specifically, so close your eyes and open them just slightly to where you begin to see about a foot in front of you, off the edge of your nose, not at your nose, you get dizzy, but off the edge of your nose. So where you're sitting, you're probably going to be looking at the bottom of that pew. And just hold your attention there. So eyes are open just slightly. They're not wide open. They're not starting to close. Just open slightly. Close your mouth. Breathe in. Follow breath in. Breathe out. Follow breath out. Breathing in. Feel the stomach and chest rise. Breathing out. Feel the stomach and chest fall. Breathing in, you hear the sound of your breath. Breathing out, you hear the sound. Breathing in, you feel the sensation of breath. Breathing out, you feel the sensation of breath. And open your eyes completely. You see the difference? Drastic, life-changing. People can stop thinking that meditation is closing their eyes and just like daydreaming, because that's just daydreaming.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a training of the mind to be present. And people often say, almost always exactly what you just said, which is, I close my eyes and I'm trying to focus on breath. I use very clear words with you. Feel sensation of breath. Hear the sound of the breath. So it's complete awareness of the breath during the process with eyes open, which is very different from closing your eyes and saying, I'm just going to focus on breath. Breath in, oh, I had a long day. And before we even take a breath out, we're already back to the crap that's in our head. So try that. Other thoughts, questions?
I have a question. During the meditation, I find myself, my ego getting in the way a little bit of saying, breathe harder, breathe softer. What is it? What's the best way of letting that ego go? Just saying you're okay breathing the way you are.
Can you repeat that last part again?
What's the good way of telling yourself that you're breathing, that you're just being the way you are?
Is what? I mean, I heard it. I just want to hear you say it again. You've already forgotten it. You said it so beautifully the first time, too. What is
it? It's easy to forget things that I say. Half the time that's the battle with me of like, or back and realizing what I said.
Sure, that's okay. What you said was, now I forgot. What you said was, what's the best way to remind yourself that it's okay to be breathing the way you are? Or something like that is what you said. And I wanted you to say it again. Can you say it again now?
It's okay to be breathing the way you're breathing right now.
And one more time.
It's okay to be breathing the way you're breathing right now.
There you go. I just wanted you to practice.
Oh, you got it. Yeah.
You got it. What's the best? Your question was, what's the best way? I don't know of any better way than just to say it's okay to be breathing the way I am now. I mean, again, in theory, I understand your question that you're critiquing, you're judging your meditation practice, and my sense is what you're asking is how to move away from that. The challenge here is if you're judging and critiquing the way you're breathing, what do you think you're doing all day long with everything else? Right? The funny thing about the breath is it's the only thing that's going on its own. And we still are critiquing how we're doing it. It's the one thing we can just leave alone and watch it, feel it, listen to it, be aware of it. Just let it be. Observe, not critique, not judge. Walk outside, observe, not critique, not judge. Look in the mirror, observe, not critique, not judge. That make sense? Everything in what we call seated meditation is simply a practice and reflection for everyday life. You could also make a little, you sit at the computer a lot or kind of work space, computer? Yeah. So I remember years ago, Martina, a long time ago, old Buddha for you spot, but the thing my master used to always say that I always repeat is think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds, right? And she ended up, and then when I posted it, like a ton of other people had done it as well, and I didn't realize it. She had written it down and put it like right above her, on the top of her monitor, as reminders. So you could put on the top of your computer screen, it's okay to be breathing exactly as you are. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was enjoying what you were saying about every moment having the one thing that you're doing. One challenge is if there is an uncontrollable thing that exists, so such as pain. I've noticed that if I have a very intense physical pain, such as a headache or migraine, then it can make doing the one thing almost impossible. So it becomes that the thing I'm doing is recovering, which has its place, and I want to give the compassion and the space. But I would love to see if maybe there's space for both in a way that I haven't yet found.
When you say space for both, what do you mean? For the headache and work?
Essentially, so space for, because I know what it takes to like resolve the pain, but it's a time intensive process.
Okay.
So then some of that time that could have been devoted to action that I'm looking to take has to go by the wayside, so.
Okay. And what's the problem? What I heard you say is that when you get intense headaches, there's ways that you can relieve that headache, but the time spent it takes to relieve the headache takes you away from the work you're supposed to be doing. Yeah, I don't see anything more important than making sure your health is okay.
And I'm so grateful that I am in a place where that even is a possibility. But so many people don't have such latitude, right? I mean, people go.
I'm only talking to you right now, so I can't respond to so many people, right?
Right.
You either have a headache or you don't. You either do your work or you don't. The question is how bad we are attached to thinking what we're doing is so important that we can't give ourselves 20, 30, 40 minutes or an hour to make sure our headache is resolved.
I know, but we're talking more realistically 6 hours.
Okay.
Sometimes an entire day.
Yeah, so then I guess you're not doing your work for 6 hours. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a medical genius, like Buddhist teachings are not going to like solve your stuff, right? So what my suggestion is to understand that when we have chronic pain, anywhere, and I've been sitting with years for people who have tremendous chronic pain, each individual has to be hopefully wise enough to understand what their limits are, what they can take on. And if the headaches are going to continue to occur, and you're in a situation that you can allow 6 hours, then great. If not, then you can't do what you need to do. Buddhist teachings are not going to make sure that you have a tremendous migraine and also work. It's not it's not a miracle worker. You know what I mean?
However, it has expounding power to bring about things we wouldn't have otherwise found in our capacity.
No, for sure.
Capacity for compassion.
No.
Our
I understand.
capacity for peace.
I'm just
So-
talking specifically about your initial question, which was, what do I do when I have a really bad headache? And I'm suggesting you be with the headache until it goes away.
Can I take it one step further?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I'm using this almost as a anecdote to maybe something that we can pull upon that is more general or has some truth in it. The one thing at every time, the focus and presence with the moment. Maybe that's where I'm hoping to learn more from this experience, right? That maybe in the moment may be made of more than one thing. And I'm just using the headache as an anecdote.
Yeah. So, and I'll close with this thought. I mean, in conventional reality, we have one thing. Ultimate reality, there's nothing. That's the emptiness practice. But in nothing, there is everything. So one has to determine, are they going to live in conventional reality or ultimate reality? And we all live in conventional reality. Now, if we can recognize that we're not attached to our job, and we're not attached to our money, we're not attached to our things, and we're not attached to our house and our clothes and, where we go for dinner and how much money we spend on a coffee. If we're not attached to any of those things, you don't need a job. And if you don't need a job, you can just be with your headache for 6 hours. I mean, I'm being very serious about this. This is the Buddhist path. It's a renunciate path.
I feel that I'm further along than this though.
I don't know. Then I don't understand what you mean by further along.
I don't want to waste everyone's time.
I don't think anyone feel like she's wasting our time. No, we're engaged. We're in it. We're closing with this. So go rock on. And we'll finish.
Well, thank you everyone for the space. That's really kind.
Yeah.
I guess what I mean is, I've known you a long time.
Right.
And in this practice, I have come so far and learned so much and found my capacities for things so increased. And what I mean by further along is I've found purpose for my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not these materialistic things you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand you could also respond by saying one could have non-attachment to purpose. But in order for me to move in a way that may bring about meaning to my life and what I would like to achieve while I have the incredible gift of human life, is, I choose to have ambition. I choose to try to seek. I mean, same almost for you, your incredible realization of this temple. You've been able to find direction and momentum and effort to bring it about. And so in a similar way, I understand the grace and the patience I need to have for myself during times of pain, but I'd love to maybe reach further and see if there's a way to.
There's no further. That's what you just threw me complete, like you just presented the headache thing and then you came at with that. But if you have a headache, you're not getting away from that. What I'm hearing you try to say or express is that you want to figure out how to go further in whatever that means without the headache. Headaches will occur metaphorically or literally every single day. Metaphorically, do you know how many headaches I had the last 12 hours? You just keep going. There is no, blue pill, red pill.
There's no cessation of suffering.
You just, there is. But the headache is no longer a headache. It's no different than the bowl of ice cream. Samsara and nirvana is the same thing. It's all just experiences, moment to moment experiences of present moment. That's it. No labels, no judgments, no critiques. Moment to moment, present time awareness. This is the Zen practice. Present time awareness. Are you present with what's happening right now? And that's it. Over and over and over again. That's it. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, no one else to be. So, yeah, I'm going to close on that. Ask the question differently next time. My master always said, don't look for answers. She said, change your question. Yeah. So, which is a good thing because I don't answer questions anyway. So we'll join palms and close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Venerable Master Xing Yung during his time of rebirth. So before you all head out, we have a couple quick announcements.
Hi, everybody. My name is Robin. I'm tonight's host. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple about 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice with others. Almost every night we have different classes led by people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, a family sangha for parents, kids, toddlers, and teens, which meets once a month, and a half-day silent retreat the first Saturday of the month. Everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you're done with it. And finally, please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. Thank you so much for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
Thanks, Rob.